Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode 40 of Be With Me, and we are being together in the book of Acts. We're in Acts chapter 6 today, and I think I'm going to title today, The Balloon Fills Up. It's not a very spiritual title, but I just get this picture in my mind of we're in Jerusalem, believers are coming to faith, and more people are in Jerusalem and are coming to faith. It's just in Jerusalem. There's only one balloon, and it's full of all kinds of people. It's full of Jews and Jerusalem Jews and Jews from all over hither and yon. We got that from earlier in Acts chapter 2, verses 7 through 13. And now we find that there's Greeks in there and even priests. So listen in here. This is Acts chapter 6. It highlights a guy named Stephen who was chosen. 6 verse 1. Now in these days when the disciples were increasing in number, so the balloon is getting bigger, a complaint by the Hellenists arose against the Jews because their widows were being neglected in the daily distribution. Hellenists is code for people from Greece, but they're living in Jerusalem. And the 12 summoned the full number of the disciples and said, it's not right that we should give up preaching of the word to serve tables or handle finances. Verse 3, Therefore, brothers, pick out from among you 7 men of good repute, full of the Spirit and wisdom, whom we will appoint to this duty. But we will devote ourselves to prayer and ministry of the word. And what they said pleased the whole gathering, and they chose Stephen, a man full of faith and of the Holy Spirit, and then 6 other guys, Philip and Prochorus and Nicanor and Timon and Parmenas and Nicholas, a proselyte, that is a converter to Judaism, of Antioch. And these they set before the apostles, and they prayed and laid their hands on them. And the word of the Lord continued to increase, and the number of the disciples multiplied greatly, the balloon getting bigger here, in Jerusalem, only one balloon, and a great many of, get this, who knew this? And a great many of the priests became obedient to the faith. These guys have been the bad guys all the way throughout the entire Gospels. You know, the authorities, very few of them, Nicodemus and just a handful of them even considered the claims of Jesus. And now we find a great many of the priests became obedient to the faith and God in the balloon. So the fun part about this is we've started with a problem in the church. People in Jerusalem are speaking Aramaic and Hebrew, and now there's Jews in Greece who have come back to live, not visit, to live there, and even a proselyte. So even a non-Jew has come and said, I want to be a Jew because to follow the one true God. Now my commentary, one of the commentaries said that there was a problem in distribution. And then this part I didn't like, because of the language barrier. Well, it could have been the language barrier, but it also could have been anger at the Greeks. They had been a world dominator for hundreds of years. It could have been ignorance. It could have been discrimination. It could have been nationalism, or it could have been flat out racism. So I think the commentary was underplaying it and say, well, it's just because those people speak Greek. And of note, well, how many people in Jerusalem were Greek? And of interest, if you look at the tombs back then, the grave boxes, the bone boxes, the ossuaries, 1/3 of them from that era are written in Greek. So it was a prominent heart language of people from that period of time. Okay. So we find the church in the early steps of trying to mature. People are giving, people are distributing, people are prioritizing, but it's done in a haphazard way. And so, hey, we need to organize this and get some people to keep ministering. That is the pastors and who have a gift of the word. So don't distract them from their ministry. And we need another group of people to start ministering. So that would be the givers and the administrators and the leaders and people with the gift of wisdom. And so that would be the Stephen and his lot. So the 12 apostles are going to go to other continents in 5 minutes after this balloon pops. So we need to fill it up with people local that can help. And of interest here, their way of choosing these guys is different. Remember when they chose Matthias, the 12th disciple, they drew lots, And now the Holy Spirit is different, and now the Holy Spirit is indwelling. So how do they choose now? They choose. So no more rolling of dice. I assume the same thing is that they pray and that the Lord has a desire, but where do we find the Lord? Well, now we find him indwelling, so we find the sovereignty of God expressed in the choices of men of the church and people of the church, maybe. So Stephen, we find out lots about him in a short time. He's going to end up being a martyr. So we're not going to hear about it today. Today's pretty much going to be rainbows and puppies. But remember, Peter and John got arrested, and the 12 got arrested, and they didn't know what was going to happen. Remember, these Jews that arrested them, they just killed Jesus. They just crucified him. So, it's a dangerous business. And then we find that the danger isn't over because Stephen's going to get stoned here in another chapter or so. So why does Stephen live in Jerusalem? Let's just talk about that. Why did he move there? Well, it wasn't because of Jesus, because he didn't have time to get there. It was because of God. It was the God of the Old Testament. There were devout Jews living in Jerusalem. That is, he lived in Greece. He was probably a real Jew. But there was a proselyte with them, and they moved to Jerusalem. Why? Because God was extremely geographic, local at that time, and national and proximal to the temple. And if you were a devout Jew, you probably tried to move to Jerusalem. So I think that Stephen knew the God of the Old Testament and followed him. And then he got this crash course in knowing Jesus, and then he got this crash course in having the Spirit, and we find out later that he's full of grace and power and doing wonders and signs, and that he's wise, and then he can speak. So he's really an admirable guy. All right. So this balloon again. So we find that balloon is filling up. The disciples are multiplying in Jerusalem. Many of them, it's loaded with Greeks, and the balloon is filling up with even priests, even priests from the Jerusalem set of people. So here's my prayer today. My prayer is that you, listener, dear person, would have the heart for the Old Testament. Why? Because that's the way that God chose and even chooses to reveal himself today. So Stephen, our good example, chose to vote with his heart and vote with his feet and move to Jerusalem. Why? Because of the Old Testament. The Old Testament, the God that's revealed in the Old Testament, started this faith journey that he's going to have. All right, I'll see you tomorrow. It's a very exciting story, so stick around because lots happens to Stephen. I'll see you tomorrow.